Tingley groaned. Miss Yates' shrewd eyes met mine. What questions do you want to ask? All that I can think of, preferably starting with you two. I'm busy. I ought to be out in the factory right now. Did you say you had an appointment, Arthur? Yes. Tingley shoved back his chair and got up. I have to go somewhere. He got his hat from a hook on the wall beside his desk and his coat from another one. I'll be back by 4:30. He struggled into his coat and confronted me. His hat was on crooked. If Miss Yates wants to talk to you, she can tell you as much as I could. I'm about half out of my senses. If this is an infernal trick of that P&B outfit, he darted to his desk, turned a key in a bottom drawer, pocketed the key, and made for the door. On the threshold, he turned. You handle it, Gwen. So her name was Gwendolen, or maybe Guinevere. It certainly must have been given to her when she was quite young, say 60 years ago. She was imperturbably and efficiently collecting an assortment of papers Tingley had left scattered on his desk and anchoring them under a cylindrical chunk of metal with a figure 2 on it, a weight from an old-fashioned balance scale. She straightened and met my gaze. I've been after him to get a detective, and he wouldn't do it. This thing has got to be stopped. It's awful. I've been here all my life, been in charge of the factory for 20 years, and now she squared her jaw. Come along. I followed her. We left by another door than the one I had entered by, traversed a hall, passed through a door at the end, and there we were in the Tedbits maternity ward. 200 women and girls, maybe more, in white smocks were working at tables and benches and various kinds of vats and machines. Miss Yates led me down an aisle, and she stopped beside a large vat. A woman about my age who had been peering into the vat turned to face us. This is Miss Murphy, my assistant, Miss Yates said brusquely. Carrie, this is Mr. Goodwin, a detective. Answer any questions he wants to ask except about our formulas, and show him anything he wants to see. She turned to me. I'll talk with you later after I get some mixes through. I caught a flicker of something, hesitation or maybe apprehension in Miss Murphy's eyes, but it went as fast as it came, and she said quietly, Very well, Miss Yates. Wolf was sticking to his accustomed daily schedule in a sort of stubborn desperation in spite of the catastrophe of Fritz's gripe. Mornings from 9 to 11, and afternoons from 4 to 6, he spent up in the plant rooms. When he came down at 6 that afternoon, I was in the office waiting for him. He stopped in the middle of the room, glanced around, frowned at me, and said, Dr. Vollmer states that Fritz can get up in the morning. Not today. Not for dinner. Where's Mr. Tingley? I don't know. I told you to bring him here. He was using his most provocative tone. I could have put quinine in his food. I said, It's a good thing Fritz will be up tomorrow. This couldn't go on much longer. Tingley is on the verge of a nervous breakdown. He went out soon after I got there. Miss Yates, whose name is Gwendolen, the factory superintendent, and her assistant, Miss Carrie Murphy, showed me around. I have just finished typing a detailed report, but there's nothing in it but facts. Tingley returned about 4:30, but when I tried to see him, he was having a talk with his son, and I was thrown out on my ear. I'm going back in the morning if I'm still working for you. Those in favor of my resigning raise their hand. I stuck my hand up high. Phooey, Wolf said. A man sells poisoned food. Quinine is not poison. A man sells poisoned food and you leave him sitting comfortably in conversation with his son. Now I'm going to the kitchen to try and prepare something to eat, if you care to join. No thanks, I've got a date. Don't wait up for me. I went to the hall and got my hat and coat and beat it. From the garage on 10th Avenue, I took the sedan instead of the roadster, drove to Pietro's on 39th Street, and operated on a dish of spaghetti and a half a bushel of salad. That made me feel better. When I reached the sidewalk again, it was raining, with cold November gusts whipping it around, so I skedaddled around the corner into a newsreel theater. But I was not at peace. There had been enough justification for Wolf's crack, say 1%, to make it rankle. My watch said 7:45. I went to the lobby and got out my memo book and turned to the page where, following habit, I had entered the names and addresses of persons connected with the current proceeding. Tingley lived at 691 Sullivan Street. There was no point in phoning since the idea was to get him and deliver him. I went to the sedan and headed downtown in the rain. It was an old brick house, painted blue, probably the residence of his father and grandfather before him. A colored maid told me that he wasn't home, hadn't shown up for dinner, and might be at his office. It began to look like no soap, but it was only a little out of the way, so when I got to 26th Street, I turned west. Rolling to the curb directly in front of the Tingley building, it looked promising. Lights showed at a couple of the upstairs windows. I dived through the rain across the sidewalk, found the door unlocked, and entered. A light was on there in the hall, and I started for the stairs. But with my foot on the first step, I stopped, for I had glanced up and saw something so unexpected that I goggled like a fish. Standing there halfway up, facing me, was Amy Duncan. Her face was white, her eyes were glassy, and she was clinging to the rail with both hands and swaying from side to side. "Hold it," I said sharply and started up. Before I could reach her, she lost it. Down she came, rolling right into me. I gathered her up and went back down and stretched her out on the floor. She was out cold, but when I felt her pulse, it was pretty good. Routine faint, I thought, and then took it back when I saw a large lump on the side of her head right above her ear. That made it different. I straightened up. She had unquestionably been conked. I ascended the steps one at a time, looking for the birdie. There was a light in the upper hall, also in the anteroom. I called out and got no reply. The door leading within was standing open, and I marched through and kept going through more open doors and down the inside hall to the entrance to Tingley's office. That door, too, stood open and the room was lit, but from the threshold no one was in sight. It occurred to me that the screen, at right angles to the wall, would do nicely for an ambush, so I entered sideways, facing it, and circled around the end of it for a survey, just in case. A mouse ran up my backbone. Tingley was there on the floor alongside the screen, his head toward the marble washstand, and if the head was still connected with the body, it must have been at the back, which I couldn't see. There was certainly no connection left in front. I took a couple of breaths and swallowed saliva as a sort of priming for my internal processes, which had momentarily stopped. The blood from the gash in his throat had spread over the floor, running in red tongues along the depressions in the old warped boards, and I stepped wide of it to get around to the other end of him. Squatting beside him for inspection, I ascertained two facts. He had a lump in the back of his skull, and the skin had been broken there, and he was good and dead. I straightened up and collected a few more items with my eyes. 1. A bloody towel on the floor by the washstand, 16 inches from the wall. 2. Another bloody towel on the rim of the basin to the right. 3. A knife with a long, thin blade and a black composition handle on the floor between the body and the screen. In the factory that afternoon, I had seen girls slicing meatloaves and knives with it. With knives like it. 4. On the floor between the two front legs of the washstand, a cylinder with a metal tube on it. It was Tingley's paperweight. 5. Farther away, out beyond the edge of the screen, a woman's snakeskin handbag. I had seen that before, too, when Amy Duncan called to Wolf's office. Circling around the mess again, I picked up the handbag and stuffed it in my pocket. I took a look at the rest of the room. I didn't touch anything, but someone else had. A drawer of the roll-top desk had been jerked out onto the floor. The door of the enormous old safe was standing wide open. Things on the shelves had been pulled off and scattered. Tingley's felt hat was on the wall hook at the left end of his desk, but his overcoat was in a heap on the floor. I looked at my watch. It was 8:22. I would have liked to do a little more inspecting, but if Amy Duncan should come to and beat it, she hadn't. When I got back downstairs, she was still there, stretched out. I felt her pulse again, buttoned up her coat, and made sure her hat was fastened on, and picked her up. I opened the door and got through without bumping her, navigated the steps, and crossed the sidewalk to the car, and stood there with her in my arms a moment, thinking the rain on her face might revive her. The next thing I knew, I damn near needed reviving myself. Something socked me on the side of the jaw from behind. I went down, not from compulsion but from choice, to get rid of my burden. When I bobbed up again, I left Amy on the sidewalk and leapt aside as a figure hurled itself at me. When I sidestepped, he lost balance but recovered and tore at me again. I feinted with my left and he grabbed for it, and my right took him on the button. He went down and didn't bounce. I dashed back to the stone steps and closed the door, returned and opened the rear door of the car and lifted Amy in, and wheeled as he regained his feet, started for me, and yelled for help and police all at once. He obviously knew as much about physical combat as I did about pearl diving, so I turned him around and from behind locked his arms with my left one and choked his throat with my right, and barked into his ear. "One more squawk, and out go the lights. You have one chance to live. Behave yourself and do what I tell you." I made sure he had no gun before I loosened the hook on his neck. He didn't vocalize, so I released him. "Open that car door." I meant the front door, but before I could stop him, he had the rear one open and most of himself inside and was bleeding like a goat. "Amy, good God, she's... Amy!" I reached in for a shoulder and yanked him out and banged the door and opened the front one. "She's alive," I said, "but you won't be in 5 seconds. Get in there and fold yourself under the dash. I'm taking her to a doctor and you're going along." He got in. I pushed him down and forward, disregarding his sputtering, wriggled back of him to the driver's seat, pulled the door to, and started the car. In 2 minutes, we were at 35th Street, and in another 2, we rolled to the curb in front of Wolf's house. I let him come up for air. "The program," I said, "is as follows. I'll carry her, and you precede me up those stairs to that door. If you cut and run, I'll drop her." He glared at me. His spirit was way ahead of his flesh. "I'm not going to cut and run." "Okay. Me out first."